Right, it's time. Is the shutters are closing at the back. It looks as though everything audience awaits us county-wide. So, welcome to this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee, the last before the summer holiday break. And so, if we can start off with item 1, which are minutes of the last meeting held on the 19th of June. Do I have your permission to sign them as a correct record? Thank you very much. Item number 2, apologies for absence and notification of substitutes. Do we have that?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from 3 councillors, all for other reasons. Apologies from Councillor Helen Smith, who's substituted by Councillor Francis Purdue-Horan, from Michael Payne, and substitute is Councillor Mike Pringle, and from Councillor Deakin, and the substitute is Councillor Wilmot. Thank you.
He's not in the whip's office, is he, Mike, after last night? Right. Thank you very much for that. Item number 3, declarations of interest by members and officers. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Item number 4, we've got the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's report, as we normally do. And we have got 3 cases that the Ombudsman has found fault with, and a number where he's not found or she's not found fault. They are in the pack. The ones where no fault was found, I wasn't going to focus on unless anybody wants to, and of course you're welcome to do so. But the fault was found in 3 cases, and the first one is children's. Mrs. X complaining that the council stopped her child Q's free school meals. Right. Who's from Children's going to give us a bit of background on this? Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Yes, I'm here from Children's to talk about that issue. In this case, the Ombudsman found against us because we had misadvised and given confusing advice around the free school meal situation, and that is the case. At this point in time, although things have changed since March of this year, but at this stage when the parent was making a complaint, children are actually only eligible for free school meals if they're in mainstream school. This child wasn't in mainstream school at that point, but we did continue to pay and provide some free school meals for a period of time while the child was EOTAS. The child then went on to a permanent role at an independent non-maintained school, and it was at that point that we informed the family that they were no longer eligible for free school meals, and the free school meals ceased. The Ombudsman found that different departments in the local authority were actually giving different advice, and that was correct, and we have apologised for that, and we have remediated that financially with the family. We have then done work with our staff team to ensure that the advice that will be given in future is correct and not confused. And we are reviewing the policy on free school meals and how that works for children who are educated other than at school.
I think members will want to know why such a simple mistake was made. If a child is attending school, they're eligible for free school meals, and when they're not attending school, they're not eligible for free school meals. Yeah, have I understood it correctly?
At that point in time,
at that
yes.
point.
Yeah.
And so this child ceased to attend school, and therefore the entitlement to free school meals stopped. Should have stopped, but you didn't stop it. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I've said. There was a period of time.
So why? What can I'm sure committee would like to know why that happened. It doesn't seem to me to be inordinately complicated or complex.
Because on our electronic systems, it will have shown that the child was previously validated as requiring free school meals, and
Yes, because they attended school. Yeah,
yes, because
but
they
then
were
they stopped attending school, and therefore they weren't entitled. And this is what I'm trying to get my head around. I don't know whether other members are struggling to understand.
No, and I think correctly, had they at that point immediately been told you were not eligible for free school meals under your education other than at school package at that time, we wouldn't have ended up here with this ombudsman judgment. What the ombudsman was concerned about was the fact that we did have this period of time when we paid, and then we stopped when the child entered an independent, non-maintained school. But we'd already set this precedent and given that family confused information about what they were and were not eligible for.
And I'm also struggling to understand why it is that it's divided between two sections or departments. That one section is giving one piece of advice and the other section is giving another piece of advice.
The two sections of the local authority involved were the admissions team, because it's the admissions team that undertake verification processes for eligibility for free school meals. And at that time, they were very clear that as somebody on an independent, non-maintained school role, the child wasn't eligible, which they weren't, and that was the information they had shared with the family. Our Integrated Children's Disability Service were looking at the system and seeing that the child had been eligible for free school meals and were giving slightly different information.
Any other member wish to? Councillor Pringle and then Councillor Barnfather.
Thanks, Chair. On similar lines, really. I know Karen said that the policy's changing, and the report suggests that the website's going to be updated. Is it going to be updated with that information so as it's clearer for families to understand the procedure?
That's essential that it's updated to be clear. Legislation changed in March. The legislation changed in March, which now allows the local authority to actually continue to provide free school meals for children who are educated other than at school. That has meant that we will be revising our process, because under that process, this young person will become eligible anyway. And we are setting up a verification process so that we can be ensured that we are actually providing free meals to the right children. The change of legislation in March that said that local authorities could provide free school meals to children who are educated other than at school has taken a little bit of time to work out how that actually works, because free school meals funding comes from the Dedicated Schools Grant, which can only be paid to schools. So initially it felt like we were going to end up in a breach of financial regulations to use free school meals funding that way. We've now worked with the DFE and agreed how that can work and how that can work legally, and that will very shortly be put up in a new policy and process, and all of our staff will be clear about what that looks like.
Councillor Barnfather.
Thank you, Chair. I think we just need to put this in perspective. The officer who's present here today didn't make those decisions, didn't make those mistakes. We provide hundreds of services to our residents across the county in all sorts of different spheres and categories. This is a simple human error. It's not life altering. In actual fact, the family were not disadvantaged in that they were actually paid for school meals when they shouldn't have been entitled to. So the family themselves were not victims in that sense. I have to say, Chairman, I read some of these ombudsman reports and I understand they have a role to play, but we award compensation now because we don't cross the T and we don't dot an I, and I think we just have to be a little bit wary here.
Couldn't agree more. And as you know, we, I and previous Vice Chairman and Marsh Tower have had a couple of meetings with the Ombudsman to express our frustration at some of the decisions they come up with, but they like to justify their existence. And if they didn't find fault with anything, they'd be out of a job, wouldn't they? Councillor Saddington.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just wondering, and it may be a silly question, but obviously there was a sort of clash with when the law changed and etc. etc. And this family have come forward and said they've been disenfranchised in some way. Do we know that there aren't other families out there that when they hear of this report, they won't think, that happened to us, we'll come back and try? Or have you checked through to make sure that all the families who could have been involved have actually been attended to? Otherwise, we may find they come back with the same complaint.
Thank you, Councillor Saddington. I'm not aware of any other cases.
Thank you. I think we've exhausted that one. If we can move on, thank you very much anyway. We can move on to complaint is in place. Some double yellow lines that the police department didn't want to paint, and the Ombudsman said that you're terrible people because you've not been out to visit the site. Sum it up, or is there more to it?
There's a bit more to it. We did visit the site. Sorry, yeah, there's a little bit more to it. We did visit the site. We have a process where we should gather evidence, and that's usually photographic evidence to show that there's an issue at a location. On this occasion, we didn't gather that evidence. Therefore, when we were challenged, we had nothing to back up why we rejected the request.
Right. That must be immensely time consuming if you've got to go out and take photographs at such locations, because when you go out, there may not be a particular issue at that time. So can't you accept, or doesn't the policy allow you to accept what other people who live through it day in, day out have to say?
Suggesting, but regarding timings and things, the district managers are within their area anyway, so they pick up these locations, while they're on site. They don't specifically go out to these locations, but we do listen to what residents got to say. But we have to have evidence, because the other side is when we do progress an application, if there's any objections. So it's a two-way street really, and in this instance, unfortunately, we hadn't done that.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Seems a terribly trivial one, really. The Ombudsman was set up years ago to deal with major maladministration, not the fact that an officer hasn't gone out and taken a picture. It really beggars belief. Compensation culture, I think. Anything further on that one? Nope. The third one is a complaint in adults. Don't think we've had one from adults for a while on behalf of a son who is disabled. Anything you want to add to this?
Good morning, colleagues.
Morning.
So this is a case which we have been heavily involved with throughout adult social care and health. It's a situation that we are in daily contact communication with mum. We had the complaint through via the complaints process, which obviously we had been working alongside to resolve. Unfortunately, there was some fault found in relation to a couple of points, which we have completely accepted and offered a financial remedy. The situation is such because there was an extended stay in residential care. The rationale behind that, or the reasoning behind that, was because the member of staff working with the gentleman and his family, we were looking for solutions, and then unfortunately the situation was changing, so we had to go back and look for other options. So there is a clear reasoning as to why that individual was in residential care for a length of time. It's worthwhile noting that whilst there was fault found, the Ombudsman also recognised that we had continuously worked towards a solution for Mr. Y accommodation and support needs. So we're thankful for that, but obviously recognise that we do have learning in terms of timely communication with outside agencies such as the DWP.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that one? No, you are asked to note the report and the findings. Are you happy to note them? Thank you very much. Item number 5. Forvis. Fine. Forvis Mazars Audit Strategy Memorandums, or is it memoranda? I don't know. And I didn't do Latin at school. Too thick. Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Forvis Mazars Audit Strategy Memorandums. Go for it then.
Thank you, Chair. So just to introduce myself, I'm Bethan. I'm the manager on the County Council Audit. So I'm from Forvis Mazars, and you might have noticed our name's changed recently. We were Mazars, but from the 1st of June we're now Forvis Mazars. So we've been appointed as the external auditors from 23-24. In terms of a brief introduction to ourselves, there's a couple of points I just think is worth pointing out. So all of our team are public sector audit specialists based locally. So everyone that works on the audits work solely on public sector and are experienced within that sector. And in particular on the pension fund, they work specially on the pension fund audits. So they have the relevant experience on those. The second point I just wanted to relay was that our approach generally is a no surprises approach. So we will work closely with management throughout as and when any issues arise, so that there's no surprises as we get to the end of the audit. Today we have our audit strategy memorandums or audit plans for both the council and the pension fund. They're both very similar reports, but we felt it was important to keep them separate because we do have separate engagement teams, they are separate audits, they have different risks and therefore a different audit approach. Although having said that, there is a lot of similar information in there, so I won't repeat myself. I'll take the reports as read, but I just wanted to highlight for each of the audits who the team is and what the key risks are. So for the council, the audit team is shown on page 46 of your packs. So there's myself as the audit manager. Mark Sturridge is the engagement partner. As I mentioned, he's had another committee to attend this morning, but he'll be here in future meetings. And then Samir is the engagement assistant manager, so he works day to day with the team on the audit. In terms of timelines, we've completed the initial planning and risk assessment work in March, and we've done some early testing back in April. We're now underway with our final audit work, which is progressing well, and we aim to complete September-October time. Section 4 of the report details our significant risks. So these aren't particularly unusual risks for a local authority. The first risk is mandated by the ISAs, so management override of controls. That's a standard risk that you'll always have. The next two risks relate to valuation of pension liability and valuation of property. Now, these are both highly material values in the council's accounts and involve high levels of estimation uncertainty, so that's why they're deemed to be significant risk areas. And then finally, we have risk of fraud in expenditure recognition. Again, risk of fraud through revenue and expenditure recognition are sort of standard risks. However, we have decided to rebut revenue, but from a review of the council's expenditure streams, we've deemed that there is a significant risk in relation to that. That's specifically just in relation to year-end cut-off, so ensuring that transactions have been recognised in the correct year. And then finally, we've detailed 3 areas of focus for the audit. The first being PFI. The council have got PFI schemes for schools and recycling centre. PFI accounting involves judgment and the use of complex accounting models. So with this being our first year of the audit, we want to just focus on that, make sure we're comfortable with the council's accounting treatment. Then we've got accounting for infrastructure. So going back a couple of years, there was an override that was introduced, which the council have utilised. Again, because we're new to the audit and we weren't here when that was implemented, we just want to review the council's application of that and make sure we're comfortable. And finally, minimum revenue provision, which is an increased area of focus for regulators. So it will be an increased area of focus for ourselves. And finally, for the council, I just wanted to touch on the value for money work that we do and explain exactly what that means, because the name can be a little bit confusing, because we don't provide an opinion on whether the council are in fact providing value for money. The work is focused on the arrangements that the council have in place. So we don't look at the decisions the council have made, it's the arrangements they have in place, the processes they have in place to get to those decisions. So on page 62, we've detailed the 3 criteria that our work focuses on. As I mentioned, it's the processes in place, the plans, and how the council manages its resources, how it utilises information to ensure that it improves the way it manages and delivers services. So we will put together our commentary on the council's processes and arrangements in place, and that will be reported in our auditor's annual report. And then briefly, just to run through the pension fund, as I said, I won't repeat anything I've already said, but the team is detailed on page 88. So you have Alistair Newell as the partner on that. Again, he is at another committee this morning, but he will be here for future meetings. Ian is the engagement manager, and you've got Varsha leading the team as the assistant manager. Similarly, for the pension fund, the timeline mirrors that of the council, so the work is currently ongoing and progressing well. And then finally, just to cover the risks on the pension fund, again, they've got management override of controls, as I mentioned, that's mandated. And then they have one significant risk area, which is valuation of level 3 investments. So these are the investments that have got the most uncertainty to their values. That's why they're a significant risk. And they have one area of audit focus, which is around the classification of those investments in terms of level 1, level 2, level 3. As again, that involves management judgment, so that will be an area of focus for their audit. That was all I wanted to highlight from the report, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. So you've got the audit strategy that Forvis Mazars, you must remember that now, no doubt a corresponding increase in fee for the increase in the name. Forvis Mazars are planning to do. Are there any comments or questions on the audit strategy? Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, just to thank Bethard for the presentation. That actually put everything in perspective in the documentation, which when you read through it is quite detailed and confusing. So thank you for that presentation. And it's always good to know that our 151 officer is being kept on his toes.
Did you say that the audit was going to be completed by September?
Yes, so we're aiming September, October.
Now you've all heard that.
She said September, October. Yes, we're aiming to. Obviously, we've got the audit ongoing at the moment. The team are actually upstairs today with the finance team. Have been coming out on Wednesdays to work together. So yeah, it's ongoing at the moment. Obviously, we'll see how we get on, and it will be subject to obviously the outcome of the pension fund audit to be able to conclude on the council audit. They have to be signed off together. So we'll see where we get to, but that is where we're aiming.
That sounds more like a politician's answer than an auditor's answer. Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Perdue-Oren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to save on paper, so forgive me because using my phone for my notes is more difficult than I anticipated. Thank you for your information. In your appendix, you've correctly identified the valuation of land, buildings and investment properties as a significant risk to this council. Do you have an up-to-date list of land valuations, and will these be available to all councillors? And Mr. Chairman, I'm specifically perhaps referring more towards land close to Towton, which has been subject to a change of government policy with the cancellation of HS2. So would that change of government policy have a significant impact on the valuation of piece of land. Thank you.
So let's be clear what you want. Are you wanting the valuation put on all council properties or just that piece of land at Toten?
I suppose I'm referring mainly to that one specific.
Right, okay, we're clear now. Do you have a valuation for that piece of land at Toten in your head? Section 151 officer does.
Well, I don't have it in my head. But
On a bit of paper?
No, well, it will be in the accounts, and that's what's in the balance sheet in terms of the valuation of the land and buildings is built up for the balance sheet. What the external audit is doing is assessing what valuation and the process we've gone through for the valuation of that process, and we do use a qualified valuer for that assessment.
Can you put Councillor Perdue-Horan out of his misery? And if it's not in your head, can you send him an email and tell him what it is?
Glenn, I'm sure Glenn Bicknell will be pleased to send Councillor Perdue-Horan that valuation and the rest of the committee.
I was going to say, could you send it to everybody else because we're all gagging to know? Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. A little bit confused. That's why I'm going to ask this question. I'm not normally on this committee, so it's a little bit mind-boggling to say the least. In the appendix, you've highlighted difficulties in ascertaining information that would help you carry out this vital function. These include issues with significant delays with providing the information you need, the unavailability of unexpected information and restrictions imposed on you by management. I assume you are talking about staff at this council and at the pension fund, which is a major concern. What actions are you putting in place to ensure that you get all the information you need to carry out a thorough, independent audit, and that any findings are legal and not hampered by anyone at this authority? Thank you.
Do you want to pick it up again?
May I first have a go at trying to answer your question? It is right and proper for the auditor to set out a whole series of risks that they are likely or could face. But be assured, Councillor Wilmot, that there are no restrictions on the external auditor, and there is no issues in terms of having access to information for this local authority. I would prefer that to be on record so that there is nothing out there in terms of a misunderstanding by members of the public thinking that there is any restrictions placed by this authority upon our external auditor. As Bethan also explained, the auditors are in today, and they have been in every Wednesday, and in between times have been exchanging emails and conversations in trying to get to the bottom. Maybe that will give you some assurance in terms of the availability and the access that external auditors have and no restrictions being placed on them.
You can rest assured, Councillor Wilmot, that the auditors come in front of this committee, and if they felt there was anything that they hadn't been able to obtain, they would tell us, and we would demand that it be shown to them. So there's no question, we've nothing to hide. Nothing whatsoever to hide. Everything is available, transparent and open, and the auditors will get any information that they want or need. And perhaps some that they don't want or need as well, but nevertheless they'll get it. Any more questions, comments? You're asked to note the plan. Are you happy to note it? Yeah. Yep, thank you. The next item is the internal audit term 3 and progress term 2, 2024-25 plan, which is set out in front of you. Anything the internal audit team, wish to add to this? You're happy to answer questions. So have we got any comments or questions on the internal audit? No? Well, you are asked in the recommendation to note the outcome of the internal audit work and the plan. Okay, happy to note? Yeah. Thank you very much. You do get off lightly, don't you? Right. The next item is item 7. I've gone to item 8, which is very silly of me.
That's actually soon.
Where are we?
131.
131. Right. Item 7 is the follow-up of internal audit recommendations. Again, that looks very straightforward, very positive, and it's there in front of you. Are there any comments or questions? If not, I'm going to move the recommendations, because the second recommendation is actually one to receive a 6-monthly report rather than just noting. So I'm moving those recommendations.
Second.
All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. That is unanimous. So if we can move then to item number 8, which is the annual fraud report, which is set out on page 149 of your papers. Any additional information, any comments you need to make? I think it's fairly straightforward. I suppose in some ways it's encouraging to note that the number of cases has gone down, which I think sends out a clear message to anybody out there that thinks they're going to defraud us, that they're not going to get away with it, and so hopefully few of them are trying it now. Any comments or questions? Councillor Pringle.
Just a simple one, Chair. Obviously, social media hacking is most prolific. I was just wondering if we got any plans to offer members any social media training at all to recognise it.
Social media training. Marge, it's up to you, I think, isn't it?
It's all up to me.
Oh dear. Oh.
So it was included in the induction training for members. We can do a refresher if members would find that useful. We've published additional guidance and policies from the LGA for members to have access to. So maybe if I started by recirculating those links for members to have a look at, and then if there's demand for training, we can put something on.
Yeah, is that okay?
I just thought it was important that as we all have to sign off on our training, if members would be doing the social media support for this, that it was recognised that they've done the training, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, if... sorry, Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 154, blue badge misuse, number of cases 35. I recall quite a long debate last year about this item. I haven't got the data in front of me, and I don't know if officers have, but I suspect it's gone down. In other words, we're dealing with it better than we were. If anybody can confirm or disagree with that. If we are improving, that's good.
Yes, I recall the debate, and indeed our records are getting better, and both from a detective perspective through the NFI exercise and through the work that the team in Blue Badges are doing following the piece of work we did from a proactive internal audit piece that followed up the debate we had last year as well. So yeah, positive steps being made.
It might be useful just if you could circulate members with last year's figures so that we've got a direct comparison. In fact, it might be better going forward in future reports if we have those figures so we can see trends. But we made it perfectly clear, didn't we, Councillor Upton, last year? Well, last time we discussed this, that we wanted very positive and proactive action to weed out the blue badge fraud.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think that's a good idea. What I suggest maybe going forward, when it comes to that table that's on 154, we give a direction of travel.
Yeah,
just an arrow.
It's always very useful to have a direction of travel, and you can see trends. Thanks for that. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Purdue-Horan, I think you indicated that you wanted to at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following on from Councillor Upton, the Independent Alliance recognised the efforts that have gone into blue badge fraud. We've done a bit of research following on from discussion, and it is an issue that comes up from time to time on doorsteps, and we've done a bit of research. And whilst we recognise the steps that have been taken by this council, there are other councils that do other initiatives that we could perhaps have a look at, such as Buckinghamshire, Enfield, Greenwich, Haringey, and I can share this information with officers because it is something the public do raise with us, and it may not be an issue that's as large as it's perceived to be, but perhaps it's something that could be looked at.
Yeah, Marge will take that on if you let her have the details. We're always happy to look and learn if there are any better ways that we can employ to reduce fraud by even more. We're very keen to reduce fraud in this council, and we're happy to go to court to do so as well. Nigel.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned it as fraud, but sometimes it's innocent misuse of a blue badge. So because it's just been in the wrong place in terms of when it's been used. So we have to be careful in terms of not all of the misuse of blue badge is because of fraud.
I'm sure that will be a good defence in court. Thank you. You ought to have been a lawyer.
In response to your question, could I just give you some assurance that the piece of work we referred to that was undertaken following last year's discussion incorporated recommendations to the management of Blue Badge to actually seek comparative data with others and to actually then seek what they are doing as a reference point of actual way of learning. Interestingly, the authorities you mentioned, we know are doing a lot of work because it's financially more advantageous for a council in London to prosecute the car parking charges in London compared to, say, Ashfield or Broxtowe. They can make an absolute fortune by that enforcement. The scale is different. But it is right, we have made those recommendations in relation to actually seeking that alternative.
So we've already done the work, basically. But there's no harm in looking again to see if there's anything else. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a question that, looking at all the possible fraud cases, I just wondered how many actually went to court. Is there any gone to court, or is it just that you've sorted it out and it doesn't matter about prosecuting anybody?
I don't have. Do you have a figure off the top of your head? I know some have gone to court, haven't they?
I don't have a figure off the top of my head, but I do know that some have gone to court, and I do know that some have been prosecuted. I do know that some have taken police action, and I do know that some have taken civil action. Given the committee being a public domain, I wouldn't like to go any further today.
No,
explaining that, if that's okay.
If you want any more information, then Mr. Lacey will be more than happy to talk to you about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good. Anyway, the recommendation is that the committee note the content of the report. Are you happy to note? Thank you. And then the last item on the agenda is the work programme, and you are asked to consider whether any changes are required. We've got the work programme set out in front of us, which I'm happy to move.
Second.
No comments? Sorry, Councillor Pringle.
Just a quick one from me because I couldn't find any detail of any previous decisions annually from the Ombudsman. Is that a report that comes to us on an annual basis and is a comparison?
Funny you should ask, because I was going to ask Marge to actually give us some information which has come in subsequent to the papers being produced, and you asked at a very apposite moment. So over to you, Marge.
Thank you, Chair. I got this morning, so spooky. So the Ombudsman does an annual letter to the writes annually to the Chief Executive, which I've got here. It's the same letter, I think, goes to all councils. Just speculating on that. I won't look to the content, but they do give us some data for us, so which is interesting. So in the 12-month period they've looked at, so from March 23 to April 24, they looked at 27, investigated 27 complaints. They've given us a different figure to how they normally express this now, but what they've told us this year, they've given us a ratio of the number of decisions, findings against an authority as a rate per 100,000 of residents. and our rate is 2.6. The average rate is 4.5. So that would suggest relatively small number. I'd say 27 out of all the activities the council does and not all of those were found against us, and our rate appears to be compared favourably with other councils. So I think that's an interesting thing to note. They comment positively on the fact that 100% of the cases they were satisfied that we complied with their remedies. We spend a lot of time talking about the remedies here, don't we? So I think that was also good. I think this is last figure they've given us. I think is one for us to do some more work on, and again, it's something that we all often talk about here. In 5% of the upheld cases for us, only in 5% did we provide a satisfactory remedy before it went to the Ombudsman. The average is 7, and we've talked a lot about what we can do up front with complaints to try and prevent them progressing further through the process. So I would suggest that's an area for us to look at a bit closer and do a bit more work on.
If I can, I think it was you, Chair, that said that the themes have changed from the Ombudsman. So again, I think the theme change for members just to refer back to, I would imagine, would have been more detailed and in depth previously, to some of which we're actually having to read through today, which seem quite trivial to say the least.
Yeah, I think that is the case, and we have made these points to the Ombudsman when we've met with them. That they always hide behind it's legislation. We've got no choice. We've got to do it. But I think the last point that Marge did point out is going to be a difficult one, really, to improve. I've made it clear to the internal complaints people that we need, if we make a mistake, we should hold up our hands and get it resolved. But often, even though we think what we've said to a complainant is fair and proper, they are always advised that they can go to the Ombudsman. We statutorily have to tell them when we're wanting to close a complaint that they can go to the Ombudsman. So it's human nature. They think they'll give it a go. So I think it's likely to be more difficult to try and improve those figures. And all right, we are slightly below the national average, but when you look, the difference between 5% and 7% in terms of cases is negligible. So I think we're doing a pretty good job by and large, and we've got on top of a lot of the complaints. The complaints department are working extremely well, and we aim for perfection. We'll never get there, of course, but that's our target always. Anyway, we digress slightly, but I think it was right that we did. I was moving the work programme. All those in favour of the work programme? Anybody against? No, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your attendance, your contributions, and I declare the meeting closed.